Hey, glad you're back. I'm here with Mel and Mariah, and we're going to talk in this video how to balance life and ministry. And I feel like we're confident in 15 minutes we can make your life perfectly balanced.
Totally fine.
Right? Like we're just gonna. Okay, but what we're gonna attempt to do is just give you some practical advice.
Yeah.
In some of it will be some principles you can think about, and some of it might just be like some youth ministry hacks, right? And obviously we can't perfectly balance your life in 15 minutes, but man, we're gonna give it a shot.
Yeah,
So
we'll try.
let's talk about this. Let's talk about this idea of balancing life and ministry. You're busy, you're working a job, you're launching a youth ministry at your church, or you're serving as like a volunteer youth pastor. And boy, that can like suck the hours away really, really fast. And we can find ourselves like, oh my goodness, what did I get into? So what are some of your thoughts? What are some of your practical suggestions that you would give youth leaders that are listening and watching this video on like what are some things they need to be thinking about when they're thinking about how do I do it? How do I balance life and ministry?
I think it's really important as you're entering this. You're starting this whole ministry. Maybe you have family, maybe you don't have family, but I do think there has to be a shift in kind of your conscious, your mental status in terms of what does it mean for my time. And so you are going into a ministry that is dependent on building relationships.
Right.
Building relationships take time. And so this is not an extracurricular thing that you're doing, right? So this is a kind of a shift in your lifestyle. And so for me, as I was kind of shifting into this youth ministry lifestyle, I wanted to make sure that I didn't want to become bitter when it came to my time.
Yeah.
And so I had to shift and know that this is my lifestyle. All of a sudden, I'm going to be integrating people into my life and showing them that we can have a relationship with each other. And that's as good for teens and adults as well.
Yeah.
But when you're doing it with teenagers, sometimes it may take a little bit more time or effort or more creativity in terms of how to figure that out. So
I love that you use the phrase youth ministry lifestyle.
yeah,
Right?
it really is.
Because what it really is.
Yeah.
Unpack that a little bit and feel free to add into that. Like when you say integrating students into your lifestyle, practically speaking, what did that look like for you?
Well, I mean, students are at school, right? So we're talking about after school hours.
Yeah.
And so everything's after school, weekends, summers,
Yeah.
vacations. And usually that's people's off time, the relaxing time.
Right.
And so you kind of had to think about where am I going to bring students? How am I going to do students? And so sometimes that would be before school. Like I would pick up kids before school, go do something with them, do some discipleship before school. Sometimes it would mean bringing them to my house and being a part of my family.
Yeah.
Sometimes it would mean, I think you said about your wife, taking them somewhere with me. Well, I'm going to go grocery shopping right now. I'm going to go to the store right now. I'm going to go do over here. I'm going to go to the beach. Like I'm going to go to the beach in the summer. Well, I'm going to bring 4 girls with me. We're going to have a great time with
Yeah.
it. How else for you?
Yeah, I think that for myself, what I've always tried to do to just like break the envelope of that is give students my phone number and we'll talk through different things like that. Obviously, you need to put a boundary on that, like how late you're responding. But making myself available to them, they can shoot me a text and I might not respond until the next day or anything like that. But that has really allowed me to just make them a part of my life. So if I can't meet with them, on a weekly basis or a bi-weekly basis, at least they know that I'm going to respond to them in that way. It's really helped me get the balance of, because a lot of students are like, hey, let's go out and do something. And I'm thinking, I can't, I'm already committed to Wednesday nights and then I serve on Sundays or stuff like that. I can't give up another night, but a way that I can connect with a student, it just might be texting, hey, I'm praying for you. This is how I can have that one-on-one relationship with them, but still balance of I still have my nights for myself or for the nights for me to be discipled or poured into. Having that media connection has brought me the element of not having to necessarily give up all my nights that I need for myself as well. That has really opened the doors to be able to have some of that connection without sacrificing my time, all of it.
So 2 really great thoughts there. One, you're saying find ways to integrate students into your everyday life.
Yes.
Spending time with them while you're doing something you would be doing anyways, right? So that is great. And for some of you, that's like the season of life you're in where it's like, I don't really have a lot of extra hours that are just kind of laying around, nothing doing. All right. Your thought, equally great, because you're saying, hey, I can make myself available through my phone, through technology and whatever.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit. What are some of your best practices for how to manage that well, how to not feel like oh my goodness, it's the wrong time of the day, or even emotionally handling like when you're not available and like
Sure.
you feel bad about that, or maybe a student feels bad. Like how have you handled that? Managing in the phone, putting boundaries around it.
Yeah. One thing that I've noticed too, I'll start out with doing like a group message with students. So if I don't respond right away, there's probably another student that is getting back to that student, which students are really good at responding quickly. So I don't feel bad. It doesn't make them feel like they're unheard. Someone is responding.
That's good.
It gives me some time to process what's happening. Now within that group message, something might happen and they might text me separately. I still will have some time because if they are texting me, I probably have a one-on-one relationship already, and I can say to them, hey, if I don't get back to you, does not mean I don't love you. I'm gonna get back to you. And they respect that and they know that. So it's been a really good balance. Also, like if there's a moment and they're texting me, it's really serious, depending on like what I'm doing, I'll just hop on a FaceTime call with them and we'll just talk. I'll just say, is it an emergency? Or are you okay? Are you hurt? And if the case is yes, then I'll try to, there's some sacrifice. If I'm like with my friends, I'll excuse myself and I'll go to the bathroom and be like, hey, what's up? Tell me what's going on. So many times that's happened, and it usually takes 2 minutes. Just 2 minutes of time. That FaceTime call is just as impactful as you like giving up your whole night to spend the whole night. They knew that they were so important that whatever you're doing in that moment, you excused yourself for just a few minutes, you gave them a call, you talked to them, you prayed for them, got off, and you got to go back to your life. So I think it's just developing that relationship outside to set up how your phone relationship would work.
And from the married couple perspective, in terms of like males and females and who's communicating with you and things like that, and in terms of creating some of those boundaries and stuff like that, it's always good either for the youth pastor, you yourself, or your wife or your husband to know who you're talking to.
Right.
Yes.
Like you don't want secrets. There should be no secret conversations going on here. You see abuse in all facets of life now, especially in education where I'm at, where people have crossed the boundaries of who they're talking to. And also just knowing yourself. She might be able to handle interrupting the conversation with someone. If I'm hanging out with my kids, I'm not going to interrupt that time,
Right. Yeah.
and I'm going to be okay with that.
Yes.
And I'm going to protect that time. And honestly, a student will respect you protecting your time with your family because you want to show them healthy family.
Right.
Yes.
You want to show them that time, and the only way you can do that is modeling it with yourself.
Yeah. I think that's great, and you make a great point. You're modeling what adulthood is like.
Yes.
And students don't always understand that in relation to like their phones, And so even you responded to them saying, hey, sorry I couldn't get back to you, but here's what was going on. I think you're modeling adulthood to them.
Yes.
You make a great point too, Mel, when you talk about just boundaries with our phones and texting between a male and a female or vice versa. So, some of my practices for my wife and I were one, I let every student know, you can text me, but know that my wife has access to my phone at any time. She has all my passwords. And if you said it to me, you said it to my wife, she's probably going to read it.
Yes.
And then in some situations, I would even turn a conversation between me and a female student into a group text with my wife as added.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And she might not ever say anything at all, but it's all, it's all right. I think those are really important boundaries for us when we're trying to build relationships with students.
Yeah. If I ever had a male student, typically how I would respond is like, hey, let's talk in person and let's bring in Pastor so-and-so, or let's bring in a male youth staff, or openly have that conversation in the group setting. Everyone can see how you're handling, how you're talking. I don't want to like dismiss their text message, but I will just make sure like the depth conversation is taking place with another person there too. And then also just want to make sure that I'm telling someone, like, hey, this person's struggling with this. I'm not the best person. They need someone that can walk with them. I was like, I'm so glad they trust me, and I don't want to break that trust, but I'm not the best fit person. Yeah. So I'm gonna partner you up. And even with even a girl, like they're going through something, and I know Mel would be 100% can speak into that. I'm gonna talk to that student, talk to Mel, and say, hey, I think that this would be a great match for you guys. Yeah. It's something that you had brought up is just like, this works for me. And I think that's really, really important. I do think a lot of people try to tell you you have no boundaries for yourself. And it's like, well, no, I'm fine. So I think that like you could have so many different things told to you, but like just find what works for you, like
Yeah.
what makes you sane, what works for your life. My life looks so much different than Mel's. She's married. She was pastor's wife for a while in youth ministry. I'm just a single gal. My availability is very different than Mel's, and what works for Mel will be different than me too. But it's still balanced.
Yeah.
But you
absolutely.
communicate it well to students. And I think that's important.
Yeah.
It's okay for you to say to students, here's when I'll be available.
Yeah.
Here's when I'll not be available. I oftentimes have chosen to not respond to a student's text message after a certain time of the day. And then I would respond back the next morning and say, sorry, I missed you last night.
Yeah.
I usually don't answer texts after this time.
Sure, yeah.
And I'm communicating, you're important to me, but you also need to understand what the boundaries are, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about another aspect of balancing life and ministry here. And that's this idea that we all have different seasons in our life,
Yeah.
right? And you kind of alluded to that just a moment ago when you said, hey, I'm a single young adult and I'm involved in youth ministry, married with kids, right?
Yeah.
Myself, married with kids and a grandkid, by the way, okay?
Oh, nice.
So like different seasons of life,
Yeah.
right? You and your husband were in youth ministry for
Yeah.
quite a while. My
Yeah.
wife and I as well. And during those seasons, things change. So how would you recommend to those that are watching the videos, how would you recommend that they assess their current season as well as any advice for them on how to adapt when they move from one season, to another, like single to married or married to a kid or married to triplets at the same time? That's a crazy one.
That is a crazy one. I had twins, so I totally understand.
Okay, so
that.
you know that. Yeah.
I think it's, whether you are single, whether you're married, whether you have lots of kids, no kids, all that type of stuff. I think just to recognize church pattern of seasons of life, like church in general has its busier seasons, and youth ministry tends to be the summer. So when I was a single person and a volunteer youth leader, I could do a lot more in the summer for myself. But then now, all of a sudden, I have my kids with
Yeah.
me.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so what that's going to look a little bit different. And then knowing I can't do it all.
Yeah.
And being okay with that. Like I can do this here, I can do this here, and being okay with the fact, but also knowing that sometimes reprieve is coming around the corner and having good communication about those different seasons and the adjustments. So my husband and I would frequently have conversations and we would say, listen, we're about to go into a very busy season. We're not going to see each other a lot. We're literally going to be like two ships passing by each other. Are we okay with this? Because I feel like you don't want to have Satan have any type of hold
Yeah.
on yourself and not, the intimacy that you might usually share or the time you might need to share. But I would just know, Mark would say to me, this season's going to be tough. Let's get through this.
Yeah.
But knowing it's going to have an end.
Seeing the
right?
light at the end of the
See
tunnel,
light.
yeah.
Because if your season keeps going stress, you will burn out.
Yeah.
You will burn out.
Yeah.
One thing that I've noticed just observing ministry and then being in ministry is those really tough moments where the unexpected hits you, whether it's grief, a loss, or like a loss of job or something, and it just emotionally takes a toll on
Yeah.
you. You can no longer maybe serve in the capacity
Yeah.
that you were, but you don't feel like called to step away. You just need time to process. So I think a really good balance and healthy way to set up your ministry for success is always to have that one and that two. So the one and the two person, if the one of those people need to step back, there's still someone there running. You don't have to feel like, oh, the ministry's gonna fall because I need this
It's
time to
all on me.
myself.
Yeah.
Like just like if you're starting out this youth ministry by yourself, please find someone to partner with you,
Yeah.
whether it be another volunteer to come, a friend, or just someone in the church, so that if at any moment that life just does hit you and you need a second to breathe, that know that God's going to take care of the ministry. But we
Yeah.
can also set ourselves up for success in that is by bringing someone up from before life happens. Bring that person up
Yeah.
with you so that you don't feel like you have to carry the burden of this ministry, also carry the burden of your own hurting heart.
Yeah.
You can do that in a healthy way, in a balanced way, and then just come back fully when you can.
Yeah.
That's so great. And then a period of rest.
Yeah.
You have to build in rest.
It's a Sabbath, right?
Right, you
That's
really
biblical,
do.
right?
You
Naps are
do.
biblical. friends.
Absolutely.
Naps are biblical.
Whether it's a day of the week or whether it's, whatever time space you have during the summer, by the end of our ministry, those last 2 weeks in August end up being our rest. And that's where we literally took a break from ministry in general. It was our time for rest. At the end, it may look different for everybody.
Yeah.
You just know what it's going to be. What's your reset? There's got to be a reset at some point or in some kind of time where you can evaluate what's going on with me spiritually, what's going on with me mentally, physically, what's going on with me? And if you don't have that period of time to do that, again, that's going to lead to burnout way
Yeah.
quicker than you would hope it would.
Yeah, and you referring to something I think is really important when we talk about balance. There's different areas of balance, right? There's physical balance, there's spiritual balance, emotional balance. There's a lot of different ways that we can talk about this word balance. One of my pieces of advice to you when it comes to seasons is make sure that you adapt to each season that you face,
Yeah.
right? Because what works for you in one season might not work in the
Yeah.
next season, right? What opportunities one season gives you, another one prohibits. What one season prohibits, but it creates leverages and opportunities in other ways. So assess correctly where you're at, especially as you are launching a youth ministry, right? Make sure you have a firm grasp on the reality of like what's going on in my life, what's the job situation, what's the family situation, how much time do I have, and then we pray that as you launch a youth ministry that you'll be a long-termer in youth ministry,
Yeah,
right? Because that's when
absolutely.
it gets really fruitful and
Yeah,
gets really
absolutely
fun.
fun. Yeah.
But if you stay in youth ministry for several years or 5 or 10 or 15 years or more, then you have to learn to go with the flow and adjust with those seasons, right?
Yeah.
So, hey, this has been a great conversation.
Yeah.
And hopefully this is really helpful for you.
Yeah.
You'll have opportunities to talk about some of this with your cohort and with some of your other friends that are launching together. And we're going to help you get there as quick as we can when it comes to this idea of balancing life and ministry.